For those of you who don't know LegenVD, he is one of the most popular YouTubers for Magic Duels, and he is also the champion of this first Steam Showdown. So without further ado, please introduce yourself.
First of all, thanks for having me. I've been making Magic Duels videos for about 3 or 4 years now. I think I started with Magic 2014. So yeah, that would be about 4 years now. And that's probably, Magic is my main hobby. There's not much else I do in my spare time, I guess. And so I'm mostly playing Magic or making Magic Duels videos whenever I can. I guess that's about it for an introduction.
Actually, I got into Magic Duels by watching some of your videos. I'm sure quite a lot of people can also trace the initial steps in Magic Duels thanks to you.
Well, thanks a lot. Glad to hear.
How long have you been playing Magic the Gathering?
I've started with the original Mirrodin block, which would be around 2006, I think. So that's over 10 years now. But back when I started, it was very, very casually. Like, I probably didn't even know all the correct rules. We were just playing with a couple friends, nothing really special. We just played with the cards we had from the couple boosters we opened, just very, very casually, and then just started buying some boosters from every new set that came out, and just tried to make decks with all the cards I had. So it's not like I was playing standard or modern or anything like that, just kitchen table Magic, and did that for a couple of years. And then I think around Lorwyn, I took a pretty long break from Magic just because the Lorwyn set, I think I bought one booster with my brother because, of course, I mostly played with my brother back then, and didn't really enjoy the art style in Lorwyn. Took a pretty long break from Magic, and then I think I came back around the time that I heard there was going to be a Return to Ravnica set, because, of course, I had some cards from the original Ravnica set, and so I was pretty excited about maybe getting back into Magic. And then I think I started in my first pre-release for Magic 2013. That's almost 4 or 5 years ago now. And that's when I started playing Magic more seriously and started going to more tournaments. And that's also around the time that I started playing Magic Duels. I think Magic, the 2013 edition, was the first one I played. Basically, that's where I started getting more seriously into Magic.
See, that's actually quite exciting to know about this. So you've participated in the Duels of the Planeswalker tournaments, right?
Indeed.
How many tournaments did you participate in?
I've only played in the very first one.
Mm-hmm.
And mostly has to do with the fact that during the weekends I'm mostly playing in paper tournaments, so it's kind of difficult to fit in both at the same time.
Wow,
So had some spare time around the time, and I usually make those yearly editions. Like, I used to make those video tournaments where I would pitch 16 different decks against each other. I did one with 2013, I think, or was it 2014? I think with 2015 as well. And so I wanted to make another video series to kind of make up for it, since I hadn't made one for Magic Duels yet. That's why I decided to join in the tournament, also because I think Nighthawk asked me to participate. Participated, recorded all the videos, and made a little series about it, so I could upload it, and yeah, I think it turned out pretty well.
Well, indeed. If you take the first place, you can say that it turned out pretty well for you.
Yeah,
So
I was happy I could make videos until the finals, so people that were watching the series could at least have a nice conclusion.
yeah, and also since you've mentioned Nighthawk, as you probably well know, he has also won the recent Steam Showdown.
Yep, so I've heard.
So yeah, I think he's pretty excited about it too.
Yeah.
You've mentioned paper and perhaps Magic the Gathering online tournaments. Can you tell us a bit more about your success there?
Well, I haven't played a ton of Magic Online. Just recently I started to get a little bit more into it, just to see how it's like. Although the response from the Magic Duel subscribers hasn't been all that great for Magic Online, for understandable reasons. So I mostly just play paper Magic, and my most noteworthy accomplishments in Paper Magic so far are pretty limited. Just a couple like game days, of course, Friday Night Magic, but that's not really a big deal. And then I've won 2 preliminary Pro Tour qualifiers, which got me an invite to regional Pro Tour qualifiers, but I didn't manage to make a top 4 there. So I haven't made any Pro Tour appearances yet, but that's my current goal. So I'm traveling to a bunch more GPs in the coming month to hopefully do well there. And if I can 13-2, I can hopefully get that invitation to the Pro Tour.
Well, that's absolutely excellent. I'm quite sure that if you will show up at the Pro Tour, everybody will be rooting for you. So
Oh,
that is definitely something to look forward to.
that's indeed the dream, to be able to make the Pro Tour and hopefully do well to be able to stay on the Pro Tour. But yeah, with studies, it's difficult to really combine traveling to a lot of tournaments and do other stuff at the same time.
So what are you studying?
I'm studying computer science right now, and I'm in my last year, so just finishing up my thesis at the moment. So I have a pretty flexible schedule since I can work whenever I want on it, and in the weekends travel to tournaments.
If you say thesis, this is probably a master's degree, right?
Yep, indeed.
How did you choose your Red Deck Wins tournament deck out of all the
So
available options?
yeah, so back in the early days of Magic Duels, there weren't a ton of really competitive decks because the card pool was still very limited. So I think you just had the Battle for Zendikar expansion that came out, which was included in the tournament, if I'm not mistaken. You just had like Origins and Battle for Zendikar basically. So the card pool was pretty limited, and because of the Battle for Zendikar expansion, which had all those giant Eldrazi, the most popular deck by far was the green ramp decks with the various variations of the archetype. You had the Monvul Acid Moss ramp decks on the one hand, and then the deck that was preying on the ramp decks was the Mono Red aggressive deck, and you also had some variations of that. And basically all the other decks were pretty weak in comparison just because they tended to lose to the ramp decks, which had a better late game. Going into the tournament, I was basically expecting a lot of people to be playing the ramp deck, so I wanted to be on the mono red deck to beat all the ramp decks. I basically focused on trying to build the best mono red deck I could, basically prepare to beat the ramp decks. And of course, since this information wasn't really like secret or anything, that mono red was good against ramp decks, so I also expected some of the ramp decks to include certain cards like the O3 plant for 1 mana that gains a life whenever you play a land, which was one of the few tools the ramp deck had to beat mono red. So I also built my mono red deck to try and be able to answer the O3 plant. So I kind of built my red deck to be able to beat the mono green ramp decks that were prepared for the red deck, if that makes sense.
Of course. But if I'm not mistaken, in the finals you met an Izzet deck. I think you played the World of Rogues or such.
Yeah. I think it was blue-green, maybe a third color as well. But yeah, it was mainly blue-green with a lot of creatures, basically.
Must have been quite unexpected for you, right?
Yeah, it was not a deck that was really on my radar. Whirler Rogue, of course, was one of the standout cards in the deck, which was certainly a fair, a good card by itself. So I guess a third deck I probably didn't mention was the Thopter deck was also a rather popular, and I think that would have been my second choice if I didn't pick Mono Red, just because the Thopter tokens by itself were very well positioned against most ramp strategies, just because they're pretty weak to flyers in general. So I think the blue-red Thopter decks the blue-red Thopter deck would have been my second choice. But I just thought that mono red was slightly better positioned against ramp than the blue-red deck.
And have you done any playtesting beforehand with other players that would build your opponent's deck or testing it in ranked games?
Yeah, so before the tournament itself, I didn't do a ton of testing with other people, so I just basically built my deck based on those expectations of the metagame of a lot of green decks. But once the deck lists were published and you knew which opponents you were facing, I did do a little bit of testing with Nighthawk, where we would play the opponent's deck against each other and then switch places. So I did practice a little bit, but I don't think I did it for every round, just maybe for the first couple, just to get a better sense of the opponent's decks and things like that. But of course, with the deck list being published, you could just take a look at the opponent's deck and get a good sense of how the game was going to play out.
You did start Magic quite a long time ago, and if you've been playing paper, I think that most of the skill set that you use in paper allows you to really save on the time. And by looking at the decks, if you say that there were 3 predominant archetypes, manage your expectations on how things would change and how the game would play out, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of things translate from one set to the other, so you just need to adapt to the few changes that happen, and most of your fundamentals will stay the same.
So, bearing that in mind, how long would you estimate the preparation for the whole tournament took for you?
Well, it's difficult to estimate given that, of course, the time you play just like normal ranked games. I think I play around 4 or 5 hours of duels a week, so not that much. Most of the time I play duels, I'm recording for videos. Time the tournament was announced and when it started, it was only about a week. So I more or less had a week to figure out which deck I wanted to play and make sure I had the version of the deck that I wanted.
Well, this was on a pretty short notice, so I
Yeah,
think that having done a deck in just 5 hours is a quite good result. For the viewers that want to prepare for the tournaments, I think it would still be better to advise them that you did have quite a lot of preparation beforehand, and
yeah,
you had experience in the tournaments themselves before.
yeah, of course. Like you can't really expect to do well in a tournament by just playing Magic Duels for 4 or 5 hours. You need to know all the surrounding cards. You need to know which decks are popular. You need to know how to play out your games, know what cards to play around, which is a skill set that comes also mostly from building a lot of decks yourselves. For example, if you build a lot of decks, then you'll know which cards to expect your opponents to play, so you can play around them. Of course, in the tournaments where deck lists are published, things are a little different, so you already know what cards you need to play around or not. But still, a lot of those skills translate. So, of course, playing a lot of Magic always helps in doing well in tournaments.
What do you think are the biggest differences between a good player and a champion in Magic Duels and Magic the Gathering?
It's pretty hard to say, to be honest. On the one hand, just practicing a lot, playing a lot of Magic, the more time you spend on the game, the better you'll become. You also need to have like a good mindset, as in when you maybe make a mistake, you have to acknowledge it and try to avoid making that mistake in the future. When you win, you still need to be mindful that maybe you did get a bit lucky. So just try to stay cool-headed and don't get too carried away when things go well, and don't get too down when things go poorly. There is variance in the game, so even if you do poorly, that doesn't mean that your preparation was wrong. Just need to take the highs with the lows. Try to stay focused on your objective.
For all the viewers that are just starting their journey and considering whether to join the tournaments or not, you have to consider that even the people who play on the Pro Tour, they make mistakes.
Yep,
Ev-
of course.
Everybody who starts in the tournament, they have the performance anxiety, they have shaky knees, shaky hands. This is absolutely normal. The way to go forward, in my personal opinion, and what I found, is just to practice, 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 and then it becomes more or less automatic.
Yep, indeed. Just as with most things in life, if you do them a lot, if you practice a lot, you'll get used to them, and over time you'll be better at it.
What was the most intense moment of the competition for you?
It was the semifinals where I was playing against a black-green, and I think it was also splashing red sacrifice deck, which was actually a pretty horrible matchup for mono red, just because it was a deck that had a lot of those ground creatures that make it difficult for the mono red deck with the pump spells to get through for damage. So I remember top decking a pretty important exquisite firecraft in one of those games where if I hadn't, I wouldn't have made the finals. So yeah, top decking that exquisite Firecraft at the right time was definitely one of the more exciting moments in the tournament for me.
What would you want to see the most in the future tournaments, speaking of Magic Duels?
There's sideboarding nowadays in duels tournaments, like an improvement over the first edition where you didn't have a sideboard. So that does increase the strategical depth of the games for sure, since you need to be prepared to have a sideboard plan and know your opponents will have a sideboard plan, so you need to adjust your strategy post board to the opponent's strategy post board, and that adds a lot of depth to the games. So I think that's definitely a good thing.
All right, that sounds good. Would you like to say anything to the viewers or perhaps to subscribers?
I don't know, just play Magic, man. It's a great game, and watch all my videos because no, I'm kidding. Just yeah, play duels, enjoy it, take the good with the bad, and yeah, just be nice to people.
All right, thank you very much for this. This concludes the first part of the interview. So thank you for being with us, thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.